I didn't cry at the funeral. I didn't scream when they told me the plane went down. I didn't collapse like the women in the movies. I just stood there, holding my two sons' hands, watching the horizon like a fool, waiting for a miracle. Emma, the woman who always had a plan, had nothing left but silence. For 15 years, I wore that silence like a second skin. People pitied me. Some said I was strong. But they didn't see the nights I curled into the corner of the bed, one half still untouched, still his. They didn't hear the words I whispered into the pillow, pretending it was his chest. What hurt more wasn't losing him, it was how my boys looked at me like I'd let him go too easily, like I'd replaced his memory with a routine. I worked 3 jobs, paid every tuition, smiled through every graduation. But every smile from them had a hint of distance, like I was the one who left. They didn't know I still kissed his photograph before every interview, every birthday, every night. They didn't know I still bought his favorite tea, kept the cup in the same spot on the shelf. Then one morning, as the rain tapped against the window like fingers from another world, someone knocked on the door. I thought it was a delivery. I opened it with one hand, still wiping tears from a dream I couldn't remember. And then I dropped the towel. Because standing there, soaked in rain and time, was him. Gray hair, scar across the cheek, but those eyes, my God, those eyes. The same ones that once promised me forever. Emma, he said. Just that. My name. As if 15 years hadn't passed. As if the silence had never swallowed our lives. I didn't know whether to hit him or hold him. My hands did both. The boys, men now, thought it was a prank. They came running down, eyes wide, breath caught, silence thicker than walls. No one cried. No one spoke. We just stood there, 4 people stitched together by disbelief. He explained the crash, the isolation, the village, the rescue that came years later. I wanted to believe. My heart did before my mind allowed it. But the boys, oh, the boys. They turned to me with those eyes again, but now it was worse. It wasn't distance. It was shame. Mom, they started. And I knew. They finally saw it. The loyalty, the waiting. The kind of love that doesn't ask for applause. That night we sat together for the first time in years, not just physically, emotionally. The air didn't feel like glass between us anymore. And when I looked at him, I didn't see a ghost. I saw home. Maybe forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it just sits beside you in the quiet, waiting for you to stop shaking. They used to think I was a cold woman, that I no longer missed their father, that maybe I'd never really loved him. My sons never saw me cry, not even once. And so in their young hearts, silence turned into distance. But how can I explain the kind of grief that doesn't scream? How could I tell them I didn't cry? Not because I didn't feel the pain, but because if I allowed even a single tear to fall, the whole dam inside me would break, and I was all they had left. I remember the night I signed the death certificate. There was no body, no farewell, just a black box, a name on the missing list, and a tired official telling me, "We have to presume the worst." Worst? What's worse than a wife who doesn't get to say goodbye? What's worse than telling 2 small boys that daddy is gone, but not gone enough to bury? I stayed up for nights after that, didn't eat, didn't sleep, just stared out the window hoping the phone would ring, or maybe a letter, or a knock on the door. But there was nothing. So I folded away the memories, literally. Every shirt of his I pressed and packed into boxes. Every photo I sealed in a brown envelope. I thought it would help me breathe. It didn't. I went back to work a week later. My boss didn't even say I'm sorry. He said, "You're stronger than most." And I smiled, because that's what people expected me to be. The strong widow, the iron mother. They didn't see me clench my fist in the bathroom to stop myself from screaming. Years passed. My boys grew tall, smart, but distant. They stopped asking about their dad. They stopped asking about me. One day, the younger one, just 12 at the time, came home after school and said, "Mom, do you even care that Dad's gone?" I dropped the spoon I was holding. It clattered to the floor. He didn't even flinch. I wanted to hold him, to scream, "I care so much I can't breathe." But I just picked up the spoon, washed it, said nothing. And that silence, it grew. It became a wall between me and them. A wall I didn't know how to climb over. Until 15 years later, something happened. Something that shattered everything I thought I knew. And what I found on the other side of that wall, the truth, would change all of our lives forever. But before I tell you that part, you need to understand one thing. Grief doesn't always look like tears. Sometimes it looks like survival. And sometimes it wears a mask so perfect, even your own children forget to ask, "What's underneath?" I didn't cry at the funeral because there was no funeral. I didn't wear black because there was no body to mourn. Just a call, a report, and the word missing. He boarded that plane, kissed me goodbye like it was just another business trip, and then nothing. No wreckage, no answers, just silence. And that silence grew loud in our house. I had 2 sons looking at me like I was supposed to explain where their father went. But how do you explain a void? How do you parent through a disappearance? I did what I thought was right. I kept us afloat. I sold my wedding ring to pay tuition. I took night shifts. I learned how to fix broken faucets, how to kill spiders, how to fake a smile when the teacher said, "You're such a strong mother." But strength is a lonely disguise. And somewhere along the way, I stopped talking about him. I thought I was protecting them. I thought maybe if I stopped mentioning his name, they'd stop feeling the ache. But they didn't. They just learned not to ask. The house became quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. 15 years passed. I grew older. The lines on my face deepened, not just with time, but with guilt. My sons became men, respectful, distant, and cold. I blamed puberty, I blamed stress, but I never thought to blame the silence I created. Until one evening I was walking down the hallway carrying a load of laundry, and I overheard them talking in the room. My youngest said, in that low, tired voice of someone who'd decided something long ago, she forgot him. Mom forgot Dad. And the older one, the one who never cries, just said, "Yeah, she moved on." My knees buckled. I sat down on the floor like something had struck me in the chest. They thought I forgot him? They thought I stopped loving their father? I stared at the wall for hours that night, all the birthdays I smiled through, all the nights I kissed their foreheads, whispering for him. They never knew, because I never told them, because I let grief rot into silence, because I thought hiding my pain made me a good mother. But to them, it made me heartless. I didn't sleep that night, or the next, and every time I looked at them, I saw the misunderstanding etched deep in their grown-up eyes, a distance I had built myself. I wanted to speak, to say, "I never moved on, I just moved forward for you." But the words stuck until something happened, something I never expected, something that would rip open every quiet moment of the last 15 years and force us all to face the one truth we had buried too deep. He was never dead. But that is another part of the story. I tried to explain, tried to hold onto the gaze of eyes that no longer believed in me. I spoke through the lump in my throat, that I missed their father every single day, that every night I still sat alone in the kitchen, touching the old coffee cup he used to drink from, that I didn't have enough tears left to cry the pain out, that I once thought I had gone insane because I still heard his laugh in my dreams, that I kept a small box hidden behind the closet, inside it, the last plane ticket with his name, the wedding photo I never dared to look at too long in fear my heart would shatter, the wristwatch I preserved for 15 years but never wore, because the moment I put it on, I felt like I was replacing him, and I couldn't bear that. But my sons just stood there, cold-eyed, like strangers, then turned and walked straight up the stairs like I was a woman telling an old, irrelevant tale. And in that moment, I felt my soul collapse like a decayed house torn down by a storm. I used to believe I had done right, that silence was my way to protect them from the pain. But now that very silence was devouring me, tearing me apart, every word I swallowed turning into blades stabbing back into my own chest. I screamed inside my head, I never forgot him. I never stopped loving your father. But no one heard that scream. Only the clock on the wall kept ticking steadily, like a cruel reminder that time doesn't heal. It only widens the distance between us. I wanted to call them back, to hold them tightly and say that every sacrifice, every sleepless night working, every meal without meat was because I wanted to keep the promise I made to their father, that I would raise our children to be good and strong. I kept this house the same, every photo, every book he used to read, because I thought that was how they could still feel him here with us. But I didn't realize that in their eyes, I was the one who buried him, the one who moved on, the woman who no longer knew how to grieve. And the feeling of being misunderstood by the very people you love the most in this world, it hurts more than any original loss. I wonder how many mothers have been labeled as heartless simply because they chose to endure silently. How many hearts have broken quietly, unseen, and unacknowledged. At that moment, I wanted to smash the memory box, to break every item that tethered me to a past that made me appear weak in my children's eyes. But I couldn't, because those were all I had left of him. If I let go, who else would remember him like I did? Who would carry the love we lost if not the wife who once vowed to stand by him for life? And now I find myself questioning, was it worth it? Holding on to a memory that made my own children turn away from me? Was I wrong to give everything only to be looked at like I had never been their mother at all? I opened the envelope with trembling fingers, my breath caught somewhere between hope and fear, because after 15 years of silence, of graves without bodies, of birthdays celebrated with forced smiles and eyes that searched the crowd in vain, I never thought I'd see his handwriting again. But there it was, the curve of the E in my name, the way he always signed with just his first initial at the end, like he was saving space for the rest of a life we never got to live. And as I read the words, Emma, I'm alive. I was taken, mistaken identity, but I'm coming home. My knees buckled under the weight of it. The room spun, like the world had shifted back to the day he disappeared. Like time folded in on itself, and every year I spent imagining him dead, cold, at the bottom of the sea. Vanished into smoke and wreckage. Had been a lie I was forced to live, because no one gave me a different one. I remember the way my sons looked at me. Every time I said, your father would have been proud. The way they shifted away, like I was dragging a ghost through our lives. A ghost they had buried in their hearts, because it was easier than wondering why he never came back. I never told them how many nights I cried into his shirts, how many letters I wrote but never sent, how many times I walked to the edge of the cliff near our town just to scream into the wind, asking why him, why us. And now, this letter, this one-page letter, ripped everything open. I should have felt joy, relief, but all I felt was pain, sharp and staggering, because he'd been alive while I'd been dying a little every day. I looked at the photo on the mantel, our wedding day, his smile, my eyes full of a future, and I wanted to hurl it across the room, because what was the point of 15 years of grief if the man wasn't dead? What was I mourning? A marriage? A life? Or my own soul that I'd buried alongside the idea of him? I thought about my sons, how they resented me for forgetting, for moving forward, for not talking about him more. But how could I when every word was a blade? And now, how do I tell them that their father didn't die in fire or water or sky, but in some nameless prison in a country none of us had ever visited? How do I tell them that I lied to them without knowing? That I let them hate me because it was easier than letting them hope? And what if he comes back and he's not the man I remember? What if I'm not the woman he left behind? What if we've all changed too much, bled out too long, loved too differently to ever fit again? I sat on the kitchen floor, letter in my lap, tears I didn't know I still had pouring down my cheeks. And all I could whisper was, "Why now?" over and over, like a prayer or a curse, because part of me wished I hadn't opened the envelope. Never seen that handwriting, never been given this second life, when I'd already spent the first one burying him with my own hand. When the door opened and I saw him standing there, I thought time had broken, like the years never happened. Like every tear, every lonely night, every birthday missed, every broken promise had somehow been reversed, undone, erased by this impossible moment. But my body didn't believe what my eyes saw. It froze, breath locked in my throat, knees trembling as if I was facing a ghost. Because how do you look into the eyes of someone you buried in your heart 15 years ago and believe they're real, that they're breathing, that their chest rises and falls with air you thought had been stolen by the sea? And I looked at my sons, my boys who had become men in his absence, and they stood there like statues, silent, faces pale, eyes wide with questions they couldn't form into words, and all I could do was let the tears come. Tears I didn't know I still had, because somewhere inside me I had stopped believing in miracles, in second chances, and here he was, older, tired, a little broken maybe, with silver in his hair and pain in his gaze, but alive. And his voice, it was hoarse when he said my name, Emma, like he was testing if I'd still answer, if I still belonged to that name in his mouth. And I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because how dare he come back now, after I spent years stitching my soul back together with threads of silence, after I lied to our sons just to protect them from the pain of not knowing, after I learned to live with the ache of never having closure, and yet even through that anger, that confusion, I wanted to run to him. To hold him, to scream and hit and kiss him all at once, because love like that doesn't die. It just waits, buried deep beneath grief and guilt and endless what-ifs. And he stepped closer, tears in his eyes too. And I saw the man I married beneath the years, beneath the sorrow, and I whispered, "Is it really you?" And he nodded. And then I collapsed into his arms, because my legs couldn't hold the weight of it all. The reunion, the relief, the rage. And our boys, they finally moved, one step forward, hesitant, like a child again, not the tall, serious man he had become, and said, "Dad?" And when he nodded, both of them broke down, sobbing, reaching out, and I watched them fold into each other like something lost had finally been found, like our broken family had been glued back together by some cruel miracle. And I knew it wouldn't be easy, that there would be questions and therapy and years of untangling what 15 years of absence had done to all of us. But in that moment, in that living room that had known too much silence, There was only the sound of 4 people crying, healing, beginning again. I used to think pain had a shape, like a sharp blade or a heavy stone, something I could see or throw or bury somewhere far away. But grief is different. It's silent, slow, it grows like vines in the dark, wrapping around your chest, choking your breath until one day you wake up and realize you haven't really breathed in years. And when my sons stood in front of me, their voices trembling, eyes red, saying, "I'm sorry, Mom," and "We were wrong," I wanted to believe those words would melt the years of cold silence between us. But they didn't, not all at once, because part of me had learned to live in the quiet, in the distance, convincing myself I didn't need their understanding, their warmth, their belief in me. And now, with their voices cracking, with their heads bowed like children again, I wanted to scream, to ask where they had been all those nights I came home from work to an empty house. The nights I stood by the window watching the dark, hoping one of them would come down, say goodnight, or just sit beside me, anything to break the loneliness that filled these walls ever since their father vanished from the sky. And when they told me they thought I had forgotten him, stopped loving him, that they resented how I never spoke his name, I felt something inside me twist and tear, because the truth was, I never stopped thinking about him, not one single day. And the silence wasn't betrayal, it was protection, it was survival, because speaking of him would break me, would make the ache real, and I had no space to break. Not when I was working 2 jobs and counting coins at the kitchen table just to make sure they had enough for school, for food, for a future. And now they stood here, men with tired eyes and broken guilt, and for the first time, I let myself feel the full weight of those missing years, of birthdays celebrated with forced smiles, of quiet dinners, of tears I never let them see. And when I opened my mouth, the words didn't come out like blame, but like rain. "I wasn't strong," I whispered. "I was just too tired to cry." And they reached for me then, arms wrapped around the mother they had misjudged, and I broke, finally, after all those years of holding it in. And the sobs came heavy and raw, and I felt their hands trembling on my back, their heads on my shoulder like they were little boys again, needing comfort, giving it back. And in that moment, in the middle of the wreckage of our unspoken pain, we held each other and let the years wash away, not with perfect words, but with truth, with tears, with the quiet knowing that love had always been here, buried under pride, under assumptions, waiting to be seen again. 15 years is a long time to be alone, to carry silence in your chest like a second skin, to live every day with the ache of unanswered questions and the sound of a door that never opened again. But somehow through all of it, I kept going. I worked, I cooked, I smiled when needed, and I waited, not knowing what for, maybe just hoping that the pain would dull, that the memories would hurt less, that one day the boys would understand why I did what I did, why I held my grief so tightly it turned into silence. And then, one spring morning, when the cherry tree in front of our house bloomed for the first time in years, like it too was trying again, I opened the front door and saw him, my husband, older, thinner, but alive, standing on the same porch we once shared dreams on. And in that instant, the world stopped, not in shock, not in fear, but in a quiet kind of grace, as if life had finally decided we had hurt enough, and now it was time for healing. And he stepped inside like he never left, arms shaking, eyes wet, and our sons, grown men now, looked at him with disbelief, then anger, then the tears they had been holding back for 15 years. And we talked. All night. We asked questions, we shouted, we cried. And somehow in the mess of it all, we found something still standing beneath the rubble. Love. And now, years later, our home is full again. Not just of people, but of warmth, laughter, shared dinners, the smell of cinnamon bread on Sundays, my husband humming while he waters the plants, our sons bringing their wives and children over on weekends, and I sit at the same kitchen table that once felt so big, so empty, and now it's small again because it's full of stories, jokes, spilled drinks, and joy. And every now and then, when no one is looking, I reach across the table and touch his hand, just to make sure he's real. And he always looks back with that same quiet smile that says, "I'm here." And in those moments, I know that pain didn't win. That loss didn't break us. That time, though cruel, eventually brought us back to each other. And now, after all the nights I spent whispering his name into a pillow, I get to say it out loud again, across a room filled with the sound of family, of healing, of everything we thought was gone but was only waiting, patiently, to come home. Don't stay silent just because you think being strong means saying nothing. Because the truth is, silence doesn't heal. It hardens. It builds walls where doors should be, and you sit behind those walls, hoping someone will magically understand your pain, but they can't. Not if you never speak, not if you never say what's breaking you apart at 2 a.m. when everyone else is asleep. And the saddest part is that love, real love, sometimes only needs to hear a whisper to come running back. Sometimes the people we think are gone forever are just waiting for a sign, a crack in the silence, something that says, it's okay to return. And yet we hold it all in, thinking strength means carrying it alone, swallowing grief like it's ours to bear forever. But no, strength is the moment we open our mouths and say, I miss you, I need you, I'm still hurting. And when we say those words, when we let the hurt be seen, we give others a chance to come back, to step into our darkness with light, to remind us that we are not meant to suffer quietly, that love only survives when it's shared, spoken, seen. So don't wait until it's too late. Don't assume they know. Say it. Say I love you. Say I forgive you. Say I'm sorry. Because sometimes the ones we lost, the ones we thought had forgotten us, they were just waiting a little longer for us to speak. Don't just watch, become part of the story. Subscribe, like, and comment to join Whispered Lives channel, your gateway to soulful, AI-crafted storytelling. Thank you.